Irimid orta hirna gan all nefer or fuing hon shin asturid in organever. Agus nart a grassa of ron oring hon iad a hort hon crehe. Onas goruache a husno faranon a vor agus nil a gune fasta agus cortrait a crek no farid. Tre Christ ardhirna. Amen. Direct, we beseech thee, O Lord, our actions by thy holy inspirations, and carry them on by thy gracious assistance, that every word and work of ours may always begin from thee, and by thee be happily ended, through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you, Deputies. I will now take leaders' questions under Standing Order 36. I move to Deputy MacDonald of Sinn Féin. Deputy.
Cian Corla, the Taoiseach is hell-bent on upending the democratic functioning of the Dáil to protect his grubby deal with Deputy Michael Lowry.
Here.
Today, Taoiseach, you will try to ram through unprecedented changes to Dáil rules to allow Deputy Lowry and his group of TDs to sit in government and opposition at the same time. TDs who have pledged to support your government in good days and in bad, to use their own words. It is a farce, making a mockery of this Dáil, and frankly it is staggering the lengths to which you have gone with this brazen stroke.
Here.
So let's put an end to the charade, Taoiseach. The Michael Lowry Group are government TDs, plain and simple. They designated themselves as such when they helped to negotiate, write and agree your programme for government. Their colleagues were rewarded with ministerial office. That's the reality. On January the 23rd, your government gave its word that you would work for a solution acceptable to both government and opposition. Hildegard Naughton, then Chief Whip, pledged in the Dáil to, and I quote, work to secure agreement as soon as possible and acceptable to government and opposition. But clearly, Taoiseach, your word means nothing, because you have gone back on your commitment and have made no genuine effort to find a resolution. Instead, you propose to turn the Dáil inside out by allowing government TDs access to the mechanisms which the actual opposition use to hold your government to account. You want the utterly absurd spectacle of Michael Lowry and his group taking leaders' questions, pretending to challenge the government that they are part of. This is a sham. And you've dug in because you don't want to be accountable. Your claim that this is all about speaking time for backbenchers is patently untrue. In fact, you want to get rid of Taoiseach's questions on a Wednesday, so pull the other one, Taoiseach. Accountability matters. Just ask those you misled on housing delivery during the election. Ask the parents of children with special needs who the government led up the garden path on funding of services. But you don't want to be accountable. Isn't that the truth, Taoiseach? So what exactly does Michael Lowry have over you, Micheál Martin? What debt do you owe to him? A former Fine Gael minister, a rogue politician as you described him, now kingmaker for your government, a man who you want to sit in both government and opposition at the same time. The combined opposition has repeatedly sought to meet with you to resolve this matter. Our offers have either been rejected or ignored. You act in bad faith. And to meet your narrow short-term need to placate Lowry and co, you now propose to do real and lasting damage to the democratic processes of the Dáil. Tá fianna fáil agus Fine Gaeilge mulla faimu déanlachach na Dála ompu bonus Cian chun an sucrú súrach atá acu le Michael Lowry a cosint, ní ghlacamid leis. The combined opposition are not backing down on this matter. We reject your attempt to run roughshod over this Dáil and to ram through this motion. You can step back from the brink, Taoiseach. You can still meet with the opposition to work out a solution. But what you will not get away with is pretending that signed and sealed government TDs can act as opposition. You cannot be in government and opposition at the same time.
Cian Corla bólam rá nar ein tíam in éair leis an méad atá ráite ag tachta McDonald. Mar tá sé dochreite an méad atá ráiteige. Agus níl I gceist a going 8 nóméad an Mart agus 8 nóméad níos breise an Géadín a thabhairt do cúlmhín seoirí an rialtas agus tachtaí Dáil in Asplach. So in essence, I have to say that the distortion of the debate is extraordinary. The disproportionate response of Sinn Féin and indeed the opposition is extraordinary. When you consider that this Dáil meets 101 days approximately a year, okay? And what is being proposed for 60 TDs, that they would have an opportunity of 8 minutes on a Tuesday and 8 minutes on a Wednesday to ask questions of the Taoiseach of the day. Now that actually means that for an individual in that 60, it could be an opportunity. I haven't interrupted anybody.
Deputies,
it basically means we're talking about once a year that a backbench TD may get that opportunity to speak in this other questions. And for all of that, the opposition have manufactured a political row, have raised this to heights that are quite farcical, given the enormity of the issues we have to face as a country. And if I could say, if I may say,
Deputies, do you wish to listen to the answer out of respect for the function?
I respect,
Deputy, please. Deputies, the Taoiseach is speaking. Had you not noticed? You've asked a question. He is deputy.
I respect the Cian Corla. I respect the right of every deputy who's elected to this House. I respect their rights. I respect their rights to be heard, as well as their rights to speak. There's an attempt already to frustrate my attempt to speak here this morning in response, or this afternoon in response to Deputy McDonald. No, I would say that what the opposition, in a more serious vein, had been about, the opposition had been endeavouring to, if you like, direct a new departure, or dictate a new departure, whereby it becomes the opposition. The opposition are now saying that it's up to them to decide who sits where in this House, who forms what group, and who becomes a member of what group. That is unprecedented. That is unprecedented by any yardstick. I have never, and I'm in this House.
Deputies, I'm standing. I expect that you will respect the chair. We are in a democratic House. This is Leader's question. We are deputies. Whether you like what's been said or not, please listen. That's the process. We have a lot of visitors in our gallery. The public are watching. I'd ask us all, I'm asking that you have respect for one another, one and all. That's all I'm asking for those who are watching.
Cian Corla, I was elected to this House first in 1989. I have never seen an attempt like this to say to independent. I have never seen an attempt like this to tell. No, sorry, no. I've got to finish. I've been interrupted.
I am deputies. Deputies, while you may not have respect for me, I am the chair. When I speak, nobody else speaks. Deputies, I'm asking, respect the process and the operation of the House. That means, deputies, that when I speak and I ask you to have respect for the chair, that decision has been made and it's well gone. We are in the democratic process of where we are in a different matter today. Now, I'd ask Deputy MacDonald to respond.
Cian Corley, with the greatest of respect, we are on the same ground. And Micheál Martin can spare us and the nation his sanctimonious homilies on democracy. You're here since 1989, a lifetime, a political lifetime. Never has such a brazen stroke been attempted, never. In all of the peculiar shenanigans of this place, never something like this. You were quick enough to throw your own people under the bus in the last Dáil when it suited you. It's incredible that you will go to these extraordinary lengths for Deputy Michael Lowry. And we're asking why. We should have an answer to that. And Taoiseach, it's as simple as this. You shouldn't take people for fools. People know for their interest to be protected, for politics and democracy to work, there is the government with its prerogatives to discharge. We respect that. You need to respect the duty and the prerogatives of opposition. But you don't want that. You want to blunt opposition because you don't want to be held to account. And if you're worried about your backbenchers, leave Taoiseach's questions on a Wednesday. That gives them ample opportunity to raise matters with you.
Taoiseach to respond.
Cian Corley, I hope Deputy MacDonald notes that she got full respect and opportunity to speak from this side of the House. I was not afforded that respect and courtesy from the other side of the House when I endeavoured to answer a while ago to her questions. And what I want to say fundamentally to Deputy MacDonald, the point I was making is I've never witnessed before parties trying to tell others what box they're in, what group they're in and so on. That is unprecedented. No, the other point I would make is this. Deputy MacDonald, I haven't. There we go again.
Deputies, resume your seat. Deputy, you resume your seat. Resume your seat when the Ceann Comhairle is standing. Now, I'm going to say we have spent hours, I have invested as much as 20 hours over the past months trying to come to a consensus and an agreement. Unfortunately, we have reached an impasse. I would expect respect, Deputy, so that I can finish what I'm saying. Excuse me, Deputy, I'm speaking. We have reached an impasse. And when we reach an impasse, we then move to the mechanism that moves all democratically elected from an impasse, which is the voting mechanism. We are now, excuse me, deputies,
So did the Chief Whip mislead the Dáil when she said it would be with the acceptance of the opposition? And Corley, can you rule not, did the Chief Whip...
Resume, deputy. Resume your seat, deputy. Resume your seat. Resume your seat, deputy.
Maybe you should...
You should resume your seat. You know the rulings of the House.
Make a ruling on that issue. Did you deliberately mislead the
Deputy, have you... Is it that you don't have respect for me or the chair? Because now it's becoming apparent that it is now becoming apparent. I would ask that you respect the chair. Whether I don't, it's not me. I'm not concerned, but I am the Ceann Comhairle and I am sitting in the chair. And I expect the level of respect to come from each and every member. Each and every, when I speak. Now, it is well documented, the disruption and the level of which it's to go today. We are either going to continue with leaders' questions or we can move on. You may not like the answers that you're getting. I can't instruct answers. excuse me, I cannot. My function is to chair this Dáil and ensure that the House operates. And we are moving with the business. I now move to Deputy Ivana Bacik.
Cian Corla. Taoiseach, once more, you're dragging us back to this absurd technical groups issue with today's motion. You're dragging us back. And Taoiseach, bombs are raining down in a genocidal bombardment on children in Gaza. The people of Ukraine are fighting for their country. We're seeing democracy under threat across the globe. In Belarus, in Hungary, we're seeing it in Turkey. We're seeing grim new milestones for global warming. We're seeing a housing crisis that is deepening here at home. Fears growing about the impact of Trump's tariffs. Taoiseach, these are the pressing issues that deserve all our attention. Instead, your government insists on continuing to push through this proposed amendment to standing orders, a desperate distraction. You're seeking to confuse the issue. You talk about speaking rights. But Taoiseach, we all know what's at issue here. This is a simple matter. You cannot be in government and in opposition at the same time. And it's at precisely this time that we need to stand firm and resolute in our defence of democratic values in this House and of our constitutional function as members of Dáil Éireann. Article 28.4.1 of our Constitution, Taoiseach, provides that the government shall be responsible to Dáil Éireann, and that's why our standing orders provide for leaders' questions. It's the set-piece exchange every week where we in opposition, as opposition leaders, get to hold you and your government to account. And it matters for our communities that the lines are clear in a democracy, that we can assign responsibility when things go wrong. And since we took our seats in this Dáil, we have sought accountability from you for many issues. For example, statements you and your ministers made during the general election campaign when you exaggerated how many houses would be built. On behalf of the people we represent, we have to hold you to account on those claims and on so much more. Massive delays in children seeking assessments of need, failures to provide school places for children with additional needs, glaring absence of climate policies. It's our constitutional duty to represent our communities and hold government to account. And that's why it matters when we see your continued attempts to create a sham opposition, a contrivance, purely to placate the Lowry lobby. To describe Lowry's group as wolves in sheep's clothing would give them too much credit, but they are certainly a very poor tribute act, Taoiseach, a poor imitation of those of us who are genuinely in opposition, who are genuinely taking our constitutional duty seriously. Taoiseach, you know, as everyone knows, that the manufactured, nonsensical other members' questions device is really being introduced to give the Lowry lads and Deputy Toole special time to tell the government how well you're doing. You know it, everyone in the country knows it. This is the group that's undertaken to support your government in good times and bad. The Cian Corla has ruled that they are not in opposition. Let's respect the Cian Corla's ruling. Let's give up this farce.
Thank you, Deputy.
Let's give up this farce. How can you continue to justify this? You can't be in government and opposition at the same time.
Let's see what's being proposed. Private members' business still lasts for 120 minutes. No change. Sponsor time, 40 minutes. No change. Sinn Féin time remains exactly as it was in the last Dáil. What's interesting is each other opposition grouping gains time in this Dáil under this proposal as compared to the last time out. And I can recall a time when this Dáil, when the Labour had a calamitous general election result, that we facilitated reducing the threshold to allow the Labour Party speaking rights at the time. Easily forgotten, Deputy, by you and your members. There is no change in terms of ministers of state, in terms of responding to the Dáil. In other words, absolutely no change in terms of accountability. Sorry, again, you're interrupting. No change in accountability of this government to the Dáil as compared to the last Dáil. Absolutely no change. And what is farcical, Deputy, what is farcical is the extraordinary manufactured political row, wholly disproportionate.
Deputies.
Wholly disproportionate to the issues at stake. In other words, the changes are very modest. It doesn't in any shape justify the level of manufactured and feigned outrage that we're witnessing on the opposition side, and that's what we are. And I agree with you, Deputy. There are far more substantive and profound issues facing this country that you should now be getting on with. And that does relate to issues like housing and disability services. And it does relate to perhaps what will be the most significant and profound economic winds blowing in our direction that we've seen for quite some time. And that's what this Dáil and this Oireachtas needs to focus on. And we also need to focus, yes, on the wars that are raging Europe and in the Middle East, with appalling and savage and loss of life and slaughter of people. But are we seriously suggesting that giving 8 minutes a day to allow backbench TDs is such a profound change in the standing orders that it necessitates the
Deputies. Thank you, Deputy Bacik. Deputy Bacik, or well, Taoiseach, do you wish to continue? If we're going, well then, Deputy, there's a minute, Deputy Bacik. It's not your time yet. It's the Taoiseach has a minute left.
I make the point that the level of change here is so minuscule when you look at it. 60, and by the way, 60 TDs, they get one chance a year to participate in this format. And that's exciting everybody. One opportunity for a backbench TD to question me or to question the Taoiseach of today, and you're all up in high dough. You're all in feigned outrage. And I say this much, one final point. Government, somebody, when an election happens, there actually is a fundamental obligation to form a government, which has been completely lost sight of here. And the important, again, keep shouting, yeah.
Deputies, all you're doing is running down the clock.
I can recall governments that were formed with the support of 3 independent TDs. No one at the time, nobody at the time, again, it is noteworthy that people do not, on the opposite side, do not want to hear a response to the questions being tabled. We have afforded them the right to say, but it's complete shut down, because you don't want you shut down the debate, you don't want the points made. No opposition TD ever lost any rights to this date. And this has been proved by senior council opinion, multiple senior council opinions at this stage, in terms of previous standing orders in respect of opposing.
Deputy Bacik, to respond, please.
Well, Taoiseach, as we all know, the Cian ruled on the 3rd of February that the Lowry grouping are not in opposition. Let's respect that ruling. Let's respect that ruling. The only manufacturing going on is you seeking to manufacture a sham opposition, pretending that this is about speaking rights for government backbenchers. You know it's not. Everyone in the country knows it's not. Because like all government backbenchers, including those in the Lowry group, have privileged access to government ministers, and they already have speaking time. And I feel sorry for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael backbenchers. There's very few who've been out defending the indefensible on the airwaves, because they know they have speaking time already. They know they have it in QPL, they know they have it in Taoiseach's questions. And your proposal today is going to make them lose out too. Your backbenchers won't be able to dominate Taoiseach's questions any longer, because you've used this row to give yourself Wednesday afternoons off, slashing that slot to carve out time for the Lowry gang. So, Taoiseach, this is the indefensible. It is manufacturing a sham opposition. We all know what this is really about.
Deputy.
You acknowledged yourself that Michael Lowry is in government when he's promised the public that he would not be in government to do any corruption. So what is this all about? What is this all about?
Thank you.
What is the hold that he and his group have on you? That's what people want to know about.
Could I say to the Deputy, you feign sympathy for the government backbenchers, but there is an issue on proportionality in terms of how a Dáil is structured. And in recent times, you can take 2016 onwards, when we did change the thresholds to allow smaller groups to be formed, there's been a wholly disproportionate platform for people who represent maybe one independent joins with 3 or 4 independents, and they've had far more speaking time than government backbenchers have had over the last 5 years. And that's going to change. And this is an attempt. And this is an attempt to rebalance that. You know, I mean, I'm not very selective. And Deputy, with the greatest respect, your party was very grateful for the fact that we were sympathetic enough to accommodate you when you lost a whole range of seats and so on like that.
Deputy, the Taoiseach has 10 seconds left. I do not expect that the democratic process operates like this, and I don't think the public do either. Could you please allow it to continue? Taoiseach, you have 10 seconds. or we can move on.
I'm fine now.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Deputy Cian O'Callaghan for Leaders' Questions. Deputy, allow your colleague to have his time for Leaders' Questions.
Just a point of order.
There isn't a point. Excuse me. There is no point. Deputy, there is no point of order when the chair is standing. Deputy O'Callaghan, please.
Cian Corley, will I not get 3 minutes, Cian Corley? Yeah, OK. Taoiseach, your efforts to defend the indefensible are not working. Dáil rules are being reversed engineered to guarantee one outcome, and that's that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael will deliver on the deal that you've made with Michael Lowry. That is what it all boils down to. Your own backbenchers are well aware that you wouldn't be going to these extremes for them. The truth is, you've caused chaos in this Dáil and delayed setting up committees to facilitate Michael Lowry and keep him happy. The public have a right to know what was in the deal with Michael Lowry. Taoiseach, you should come clean on that. This is a shameless political stroke that would make even Bertie blush. Taoiseach, there are clear lines of separation between government and opposition because we have different functions. That has always been recognised in Dáil procedures because it's fundamental to how this place operates. It's the job of government TDs to support the government and opposition TDs to hold the government to account. Is this accountability what you're afraid of and so desperate to avoid? And in a way I get it, because this government already has made a disaster in terms of broken election promises. You spectacularly failed to deliver 40,000 homes that you promised last year. You promised to prioritise enacting the Occupied Territories Bill, but it's been put on the long finger. You spent the election promising tax cuts and enormous spending increases, even though we warned in the Social Democrats this was reckless behaviour. Now the Finance Minister has admitted that those promised tax cuts are highly unlikely to ever materialise. The truth is, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael cannot be trusted. Taoiseach, after Fianna Fáil bankrupted the country and the Troika took over in 2010, we were promised never again. Reforms of Dáil procedure to strengthen opposition oversight were introduced post-crash. It's clear you've forgotten about the lessons of the past. Instead of strengthening accountability, you want to weaken it. Stroke politics and dodgy deals with Michael Lowry have taken precedence, and Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are reverting to type arrogant complacency. Do you really think people voted for that? Taoiseach, you made a pledge that any changes to standing orders would be done in agreement with the opposition. It's clear you have no intention of honouring that. Given this track record of duplicity, why should anyone in the opposition or in the public trust what you say?
Thank you, Taoiseach.
The people voted in the last general election, and they clearly voted. They voted whether you like it or not, and it seems the election result has never sunk in with people on the opposite side. That's just a reality. And therefore, it did fall. It did fall to this side of the House. It did fall to this side of the House. It did fall to this side of the House to form a government. And Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael didn't have the numbers. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael didn't have the numbers.
O'Callaghan, please.
You weren't really interested in going to government. You had no interest at all. You had none. And your manifesto was so threadbare in any detail. It was no wonder you didn't. The Labour Party didn't want to go into government.
Deputies.
The Labour Party watching you, Deputy. You're both watching each other. You're both nervous of each other, so therefore you didn't come forward. Right. Sinn Féin didn't have the numbers to form a government, and Independent Ireland had some issues that we didn't find agreement with, but at least they came in and they engaged with us in a substantive way. The Regional Independent Group said they wanted to support and facilitate the formation of a government. And that is not new, by the way. That is not new. This has been a feature of our fragmented system. Our electoral system our electoral system has in recent times and will in the future create a fragmented result. The danger of what the opposition is saying, by the way, is that say after the next election, say after the next general election in 5 years' time, you have potential government is short 3 or 4 TDs. Why would 3 or 4 independent TDs volunteer to facilitate the formation of a government? Again, why would they? Why would they do that? If it meant, if it meant that the opposition, the rest of the opposition would say, we're going to deny you your rights as TDs if you dare facilitate and support the government. It's absolutely, I think, from my perspective, looking at it, and from a constitutional perspective, it is quite an extraordinary thing that you're trying to do here, which will actually undermine any potential for the formation of a government into the future. Because you're now basically saying that no independent, what you are saying is no independent in the future.
Resume your seat. Deputy Taoiseach, please. Taoiseach, I'm standing. Deputy, I'm standing. Deputy, I am standing. Now, whether you like what's being said or not, you will have respect for the position of the Cathaoirleach. The Ceann Comhairle stands, you sit, and it doesn't matter who you are. I've asked you to... I'm speaking, Deputy, I'm speaking. I don't wish to spell respect. We are all adults. We are well aware of what we... Excuse me, Deputy. Deputy. It is very apparent here today, very, very apparent now, that nobody is interested in hearing answers. Well then, afford the respect to have at least the answer listened to. Now I'm resuming, this is Deputy O'Callaghan's time. Deputy, do you wish to make your minute heard? Because your opposition colleagues clearly do not.
Taoiseach, you're right, this is quite extraordinary. In more than 100 years of this Dáil, Taoiseach, never, ever in the weekly schedule has there been a time slot created where 100% of the time is allocated to the government. Do you not see something fundamentally wrong with a time slot being created where government TDs ask the government Taoiseach questions without any input from opposition? Can you tell me, Taoiseach, of any parliament in the world where there's a time slot where 100% of it is for government backbenchers to ask government leaders questions with no time allocated to the opposition? That doesn't exist, Taoiseach. So this is quite extraordinary, and it shouldn't be done. Tell me one place in the world where this happens.
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
Westminster?
No, it doesn't.
Government backbenchers all the time. All of the time they ask questions. No, if I could, Deputy. Deputies, I'm making the point, Deputy, in answer to your question. And in fairness, you've asked questions. I think I should be allowed the right to answer, but other deputies don't want me because they don't like the answer. But what I would say to you is this. You take, for example, in the future, there could be 3 or 4 TDs that could facilitate the formation of a government. And what you're now saying is any independent TD in the future that would attempt to facilitate the formation of a government will have their rights diminished. That is the essence of the opposition proposal. Now you take Deputy Mattie McGrath, Deputy Carl Nolan, for example. They're part of this group. They have voted against government 3 or 4 times already. But you're taking it upon yourself, along with others, to tell them you must be corralled in a certain part of the Dáil, and you can only be allowed to do A, B and C. That is unconstitutional. You have no right to do that.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
You have absolutely no right to do it.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
And it's wrong.
Sit down.
It's fundamentally
wrong. You're making a show of yourself. Sit down. Thank you, Taoiseach. Your time is up. Taoiseach, thank you. Your time is up. Deputy Michael Collins.
Thank you very much, Ceann Comhairle. Taoiseach, today, if we go ahead with government proposals on giving extra times for government backing TDs in an opposition time, it shows how far this government is capable of going in relation to eroding the democracy of the island of Ireland. Taoiseach, our general election took place on November the 29th, 2024, and for a couple of months a government had to be put together. On January the 22nd, the Dáil stood for the first time to be forced to call off Dáil proceedings so an agreement could be made to bring the speaking row to an end. All of this time, Taoiseach, we, the opposition, were united on one front, that Michael Lowry's group had a right to speaking times in this Dáil, but not on opposition time. And every effort since has been to do everything but that by government. On the morning of the 23rd of January, you, Taoiseach, and the Taoiseach met with us leaders to end this row and let the Dáil get back to the business it had to do, elect a Taoiseach, set up committees. We all agreed that we would work together to create a solution on this hugely important issue for this country. Less than an hour later, Minister Hildegarde-Naughton read the statement into the Dáil record, agreed by you and the Taoiseach and all the opposition, that the government will today bring forward a motion to establish the committee on standing orders and Dáil reform and to work to secure agreement as soon as possible and acceptable to the government and the opposition as regards to technical groups. The Business Committee met that day and agreed we would all put forward submissions on a way forward. Again, the opposition were clear. We never denied any speaking times to Michael Lowry's group of 6 TDs, but it would be specifically during government speaking time slots, not opposition, as they have clearly agreed to support this government one way or another, which is their own prerogative, I may add. The next scheduled Dáil reform meeting was scheduled for February 26. At this meeting came the bombshell by Chief Whip Mary Butler that the previous verbal agreement given by you and the Taoiseach, read out by the Minister Hildegarde-Naughton, was now being reneged on, and a railroading of democracy was now going ahead. Taoiseach, you will say to me today, when summing up, we had enough time to try and get an agreement from the opposition, but you would not agree. But in fact, since the day you were elected, we had only 2 Dáil reform meetings to try and resolve this issue. In 28 days, I know, as I have attended these meetings, Taoiseach, I ask you, are you a man of your word or not? Do you agree with me that this was a sequence of events? And am I right in saying, if you really wanted to bring this to a fair and honest end, you would have asked your Chief Whip to meet every day to resolve the issue, and not 2 meetings, one to iron out the procedures for the next meeting, and the next to railroad through, making a mockery of this House and its procedures. Taoiseach, we have written to you numerous times to try and resolve this issue and to make sure this dark day for democracy would not happen, but you have chosen to ignore us. Will you, at this late stage, sit down with the opposition leaders and trash out an agreement to bring this sorry episode to an end, Taoiseach?
I think such hyperbole is really stretching it. I mean, the bottom line is this: is that 3 of the opposition parties gain more time now in terms of holding the government to account. That's the factual position, as a result of 20 hours of discussions and so forth between the Chief Whip and the whips of the other parties, and also in terms of the Dáil Reform Committee. And that's the mechanism that we've established, and in terms of the Dáil Reform Committee itself. And what I would say to you, Deputy, is from your perspective, you're not losing any time. You're not, compared to the last Dáil, you're actually gaining time. And that's the bottom line here.
You'll have your chance.
It was raised earlier.
This is Deputy
If you compare
Collins's
Dáil
question.
to any other parliament in Europe, you will find that the opposition has more time than any other opposition in any other parliament across Europe. And certainly in terms of the Prime Minister across Europe, no Prime Ministers in Dáil earn more than the Irish Taoiseach. And these can be checked out and looked at in terms of other parliaments across Europe. So this proposal is proportionate, because it's endeavouring to give backbench TDs of the government parties and independent TDs an opportunity 8 minutes on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday. So all this row, the dark day of Irish democracy, is about 8 minutes extra on a Tuesday, 8 minutes extra on a Wednesday. And this, apparently, we're on the brink of a terrible sort of negativity and so on like that. And so,
Deputies.
Over the last 10 years, there's been a consistent incremental increase in time allocated to smaller groups within the Dáil, to independents within the Dáil. I mean, there's a group on the far left, they have about 3 or 4, and they have more speaking rights than anybody with 40 TDs or more, and so on like that. And that's been the reality over the last 10 years. And there does need to be a degree of rebalancing. And backbench TDs do need the opportunity to ask questions as
Deputies,
well. And there's no big deal in that, and it doesn't in any way, because the big demand from you at the beginning, when we met with you, as you outlined, the big issue is you didn't want to lose any time. You have not lost any time. You've actually gained time across the opposition groups themselves.
It's Deputy Collins's time.
And again, it's interesting. I've made a fundamental point. When the general election happens, Deputy, and you know this because you've engaged with us on different times after different elections, governments have to be formed. There is the realpolitik of forming a government. Governments have to be formed. Okay? Some people have no interest in forming a government, fair enough, but others do. And the programme for government...
Deputies, please.
The programme for government is the document that binds people who are going to support the government together. But I would make this point. Underlying all of this, and Deputy, you know, in a certain extent you said we could have brought this to an end. I actually don't think the opposition really want to bring this to an end, because you're enjoying it a bit for your own electoral purposes.
Thank you. Deputy
but I want to make
Collins
this point strategically. Oh, sorry.
You can make it, Deputy Collins.
Thank you very much, Cian Taoiseach. It looks like no matter what we say here, you are going to railroad through these changes. It is very clear to the good, honest, hard-working people of this country that this is what you were going to do anyway. You have to be straight and honest, Taoiseach. What is the deal you have done with Michael Lowry that has you spellbound? We know the deal has cost over $5 million already, with extra super junior ministers, and extra payments for them alone over 5 years. Is it going to cost the honest, hard-working taxpayer $50 million? 100 million, 200 million or plus? We need to know. The taxpayer needs to know. The ordinary man and woman who can't afford to pay bills weekly need to know here and now. They know it's a sleazy deal that taxpayers must pay heavy, and on top of that you want them to ask planted questions in this House to make a mockery of the Irish people in Dáil. I ask you again, come clean on the deal that might yet crumble around you and pull back from the mockery of the Irish people who are not with you on this one. Admit you cut 45 minutes of Taoiseach's questions. Will you admit you cut the order of business time? Will you admit you have cut private members' bills for our own party for 20% on Wednesdays and Thursdays? This Lowry deal has cost us enough, Taoiseach, financially in this country. Don't let it cost us our democracy all.
Thank you, Deputy Collins. Taoiseach. Deputies.
You can't be serious. Like, costing our democracy. 8 minutes. 8 minutes on a Tuesday, and our democracy is gone.
Please.
Look, come on, it's farcical. But I think, in a more serious vein, through Cian Corlett,
Deputy.
what's really behind this as well,
Deputy.
and it's very clear that the opposition...
Deputy, resume
again, Deputy,
your seat. Deputy, resume your seat. This is Deputy Collins's time. This is Deputy. Deputy, I'm afraid the fundamental issue here is your lack of respect for the chair. The salient ruling. Of yourselves. And I am loath to say again, resume your seat, Deputy. Resume your seat, Deputy. All deputies, resume your seat. Deputy, out of respect, is it Deputy? Sorry, Deputy. Deputy, whilst you may not have respect for me.
Why they're breaking their word to the opposition? They told us on the day, on the floor here, he's made the commitment, it would be an agreement. Tell us now why you're breaking your word.
If you...
What that guy do to you in between?
Deputy, resume your seat.
You can laugh all you want, me out. You can laugh all you want, but it is not funny. It is not funny. It is not funny what you're doing.
You're making... For the public watching, you are making a wholly... One of your colleagues mentioned misogyny. disgrace. You're making a holy show of yourselves for the world to see. You're making a it's very clear you have no respect for the chair. None whatsoever. On one hand, yes, deputies. And you will be aware that the public are watching, and on one hand you want this, on one hand, deputy, on one hand you wish the government to have respect for the Count Corla's ruling, while ye yourselves are seemingly incapable